The first $20,000 feels small on a spreadsheet and massive in real life because it isn't just a number. It's the line between trying to hold your breath underwater and finally learning how to float. If you're somewhere near that number, approaching it, sitting on it, or just past it, you've probably noticed something subtle changing in the way you relate to your money. The stress doesn't vanish, but it stops screaming. You no longer ask, "How do I survive this month?" as often as you ask, "How do I make next year look different?" That is not an accident. 20,000 is the point where your habits have formed enough muscle to carry weight, and your dollars have accumulated enough mass to be felt when they move. We're going to talk about why this breakpoint matters far more than you think, how to use it to shift from saving to optimizing, and what a simple 20K to 60K plan looks like when you take fees, taxes, and contribution drips seriously. If you're in that 25 to 45 window and ready to design momentum, stay with me. By the end, you'll have a 6-month rebalance checklist you can run forever. And if you want that template right now, type 20K plus in the comments so I know to pin it for you. At 0 to 20,000, most of your energy goes into building a safety floor and refusing to make emergencies a financing strategy. You're constructing a buffer, killing the loudest debts, and trying to make sure tomorrow is less fragile than today. It's a phase defined by discipline and defense. But something flips after 20,000 and you can feel it. Routine becomes lighter because many choices are no longer choices. You've automated enough transfers that the month begins with allocations that are invisible to impulse. You've got a reasonably tight list of bills, a leaner set of subscriptions, and the habit of paying yourself first has stopped being a to-do and become part of your identity. This identity shift is enormous. Saving is no longer a sprint fueled by guilt. It's a quiet system that happens even on the days you don't care. That's the first reason everything changes. Consistency has momentum, and momentum is compounding in disguise. The second reason is mathematical. With 20,000 planted, market returns and small optimizations stop being rounding errors. A modest annual return begins to feel like a month of contributions instead of a handful of coins. That experience matters because it rewires your belief about what's doing the heavy lifting. Before this point, it's you versus the number, and progress is mostly sweat. After it, the portfolio participates. When you rebalance, when you shave a fee, when you nudge a contribution up by a single percentage point, the echo shows up in dollars you can feel. That visibility is addictive in the best way. It nudges you to ask better questions. Could I raise income without burning out? Which fees am I actually paying? How do I keep taxes from eating what discipline built? That curiosity is the opposite of deprivation. It's craftsmanship. It is also a psychological graduation no one celebrates. In the early phase, the calendar rules you. You wait on payday, you brace for due dates, you dread the day something breaks. After 20,000, you begin to rule your calendar. You schedule transfers the day after payroll, so money goes where it belongs, before it becomes a negotiation. You block a half hour every 6 months to rebalance, not because it's exciting, but because it keeps your risk honest. You put a recurring note on the day of your raise to split the difference. Some to joy, so you feel alive. Most a plan, so you feel progress. That pattern is boring in the way that flying on a clear day is boring. It's the kind of boring you can fall in love with. So what exactly should you do at this breakpoint? Think of the next stretch, 20,000 to 60,000, as an intentional triage with 3 lanes that run in parallel. 40% of your effort goes to growing income, 40% goes to optimizing fees and taxes, and 20% goes to raising the contribution rate gently. Let's build this out. The income lane is about adding horsepower to an engine that now has traction. You're not trying to hustle yourself into the ground. You're deliberately choosing one capability that commands better pay or produces a reliable side stream. If your day job rewards measurable output, target a skill with a short feedback loop, analytics that make decisions faster, sales scripting that closes cleaner, an industry tool you can certify in a weekend and wield on Monday. If your time is tight, pick a side gig that stacks onto what you already do rather than competing with it. A microservice you can deliver in focused sprints, a weekend project that becomes a small retainer, a niche template you sell to people who look like yesterday's you. The point is not to chase every dollar. It's to create one new stream that flows without demanding your life. When that income appears, you pre-decide its destination before it arrives, so lifestyle creep can't claim it by default. A second lane, fees and taxes, is the least glamorous and the most underrated. People will spend all month hunting coupons and then hand thousands to fees because the invoices are hidden inside glossy dashboards. You are going to perform one honest audit. Open your statements and write down in plain language every cost you pay to participate. If you see advisory fees around 1% for garden variety portfolios, you should understand what that means in decades, not months. A constant 1% drag does not subtract a single percent from some abstract average. It relentlessly compounds against you. A portfolio that could have grown at 7% net now trudges at 6%, and that gap widens like the horizon. Over 20 years, what looks like a small toll turns into a massive detour. If you don't need bespoke planning, you don't need bespoke pricing. Broad, low-cost index funds do the unglamorous work of owning the market without paying for a story. This is where the 20,000 Breakpoint helps again. You have enough capital that a tiny reduction in cost shows up as real money, and that feedback loop keeps you honest. Taxes belong in the same conversation because tax location is often as important as asset selection. If you're eligible for a Roth IRA, your future self will thank you for funding growth that won't be taxed later. If you're beyond those caps, a plain brokerage with awareness of holding periods and distributions can still be kind to you if you don't churn. None of this is meant to turn you into an accountant. It's meant to keep your dollars doing the job you hired them to do without a leak in the bucket. You don't need to get fancy, you need to stop bleeding. Now let's talk about rebalancing as a behavior rather than a buzzword. You'll pick a simple target mix that matches your risk tolerance, maybe a broad US index, paired with a total international sleeve and a bond cushion that helps you sleep. And you'll set a 6-month date with yourself to check the weights. If stocks ran hot and your equity slice is overweight, you trim to target. If bonds took a hit and you're underweight, you add there. You're not predicting, you're maintaining posture. The reason this matters after 20,000 is that drift starts to matter. With a $10,000 portfolio, a few percentage points of drift is annoying. With real money, it's a risk statement you didn't sign. Your checklist is short. Confirm weights. Redirect new contributions toward what's underweight. Harvest tax losses in taxable accounts, only if it makes sense. And write down what you did so you don't reinvent your rules each time. If you want the exact 2-page checklist, comment 20K plus so I can share the template and pin it for easy reference. If all of this sounds almost too simple, that's the magic. At 20,000, complexity is not your friend, cadence is. You are building a machine. One lane grows the engine without burning you out. One lane closes the leaks you can't see. And one lane turns small dials on contributions while your 6-month checklist keeps your risk honest. It is profoundly boring and profoundly effective. I've watched people implement this for a single year and cross thresholds they thought belonged to other people. Not because they discovered a secret asset class or hacked an algorithm, but because they respected the breakpoint and gave it a job. There's a story I love from a viewer who hit 20,000 and felt nothing. They expected fireworks. Instead, they found a quiet confidence. They made one change. Every new freelance invoice got split the second it landed. Half to investing. A quarter to the buffer until it hit 3 months of expenses. a quarter to guilt-free life upgrades they could actually feel. 6 months later, rebalancing was a ritual that took 15 minutes. A year later, fees were lower, their rate was 2 points higher, and they had a calendar reminder called Celebrate Tuesday, where they took themselves to lunch and looked at how far they'd come. The money was better, sure, but the bigger upgrade was identity. They weren't chasing, they were stewarding. If you're listening to this and thinking, I've been stuck at 19,000 forever, I want to speak to you directly. The difference between 19 and 20 is often not dollars. It's a decision you've postponed. It's canceling the one expensive service you kept for a version of you that no longer exists. It's moving an old retirement account into a low-cost home so you stop paying for neglect. It's opening a high-yield account labeled Floodgate and letting automation fill it while you're busy living. Pick the one move that has annoyed you for months and make it right now. Then come back and tell me in the comments what you changed so I can cheer you on. That public line in the sand turns intention into traction. There's one last thing we need to address: fear of missing out masquerading as sophistication. At this stage, you will be tempted to complicate your portfolio because complexity feels like progress. Resist the theater. Own the market cheaply. Rebalance on a schedule, and spend your curiosity on improving income and lowering friction. If you still want a sandbox, carve a tiny satellite bucket where you can experiment without endangering the core. Protect your sleep, because sleep compounds too. First, set a calendar event 6 months from today called Rebalance Plus Review. Second, increase your contribution rate by 1% this week. It will feel like nothing today and everything in a year. Then in the comments, write 20K plus and tell me which lane you're starting with: income, fees and taxes, or contribution lift, so I can point you to the exact resource in the description. I read those and reply because accountability is free alpha. You didn't come this far to stall at a round number. 20,000 is not a wall, it's a doorway. Walk through it with a plan simple enough to survive your busiest season and strong enough to carry you to 60. Let your automation do the boring work. Let your calendar keep your promises. Let your fees and taxes shrink in the rear view. And when you hit your next breakpoint, come back here and tell me, because these stories keep this channel honest. If this helped, share it with one friend who's hovering near the line and needs someone to name the doorway for them. I'm rooting for you. Subscribe to Richie Returns so the next piece of your plan arrives on schedule, just like your transfers will.